Hello and welcome back to the American Experience. Today we are going to discuss a topic that is becoming extremely relevant in our political landscape and is becoming extremely, you could say controversial, you could also say it's becoming more mainstream. It's approaching the mainstream. And that, of course, is the rise of nationalism in young white men. And young men at large. Really, I say young white men, but also young men in general. They're generally becoming more nationalistic. And, of course, they're becoming more nationalistic. And as they become more nationalistic, they increasingly are listening to people such as Nick Fuentes, and they're increasingly adopting what he believes in. For better or for worse, we're going to look at this phenomenon from an American First perspective, and we're also going to look at it from a historical perspective so we can understand that nothing new is under the sun. This is just a resurgence of a right that used to exist. So, let's start at the beginning. The American right in the 1930s, 40s, 20s, etc. was not the American right of today. The American right of then was extremely nationalistic, isolationist, and protectionist. Compared to today, they'd probably be called racist, anti-Semitic, and all the other list of horrible names. But you know what they were? They were America first, and that's what they were. Led by men such as Senator Robert Taft, who has been called perhaps one of the greatest senators of all time, so great that a committee led by Senator John F. Kennedy selected Taft as one of the 5 great senators whose portraits would adorn the president's room off the Senate floor. That's how great this senator was. He was the senator that led the American right against FDR's New Deal, against American entrance into World War II, against a whole slew of stuff. And guess what? He was right. But he was all those things, and he was great. He was America first. That's what mattered. He put American interests first, not the interests of corporations, not the interests of foreign governments, not the interests of international bureaucracies, the interests of America first. America first. He was leader of what has now been called the Old Right. Well, after World War II, there was a post-World War II consensus among the establishment right and the left. This consensus was that such things as protectionism, nationalism, and isolationism were supposedly what caused the war. And so those things must be denounced across the political spectrum, and anyone who supports any of those things must be destroyed and not be allowed into mainstream politics. This led, of course, also with the rise of the Soviet Union following the Cold War, this led the old right, the old nationalist, isolationist, protectionist right of Robert Taft to evaporate and be taken over by the new right, led by men such as Ronald Reagan, Barry Goldwater, and William F. Buckley Jr. Of course, we have to analyze these people with the times, with the scenario, the times they lived in, right? Obviously, they lived in a time where the Soviet Union was high, and so interventionism made more sense. There was this threat of communism. There was this threat of communism destroying this country, and there, of course, was this threat of nuclear war. So obviously, some of the more interventionist policies they had back then made sense, but some of it was also just fighting fire with fire. I'm going to read you a quote from the supposedly great William F. Buckley Jr. It's from a book, Democracy, the God That Failed by Hans Hermann Hoppe, although it's quoting him as he said something in the Commonweal magazine. It's titled A Young Republican's View. This is what Buckley says. In light of the threat posed by the Soviet Union, we, new conservatives, have to accept big government for the duration, for neither an offensive nor defensive war can be waged, except through the instrument of a totalitarian bureaucracy within our shores. Conservatives, Buckley wrote, were duty-bound to promote the extensive and productive tax laws that are needed to support a vigorous anti-communist foreign policy. as well as the large armies and air forces, atomic energy, central intelligence, war production boards, and attendant centralization of power in Washington. You could argue pragmatism, realism took over Buckley, and he left behind his supposed conservative ideals of small government and free markets and corporate tax cuts. But regardless of what you want to say, whether he was being pragmatic, you can't deny a lot of the birth of the deep state and all that was done by Buckley. And by the way, too, he was a CIA. He worked for the CIA for 2 years, so that kind of tells you a bit of where this guy is. Of course, he's going to support bigger government. A lot of these ex-CIA guys, especially then, unless if they were a whistleblower, they supported big government, and all of that. Of course, this is what exactly would happen. Buckley, as we know, American government has grown, more agencies, more all of that since Buckley said that quote. That's just the truth, obviously. Of course, Buckley was important in changing the old right into the new right, changing that. So the old right had been a bit more isolationist, a bit more, we should put American interests first, we shouldn't be fighting foreign wars if it doesn't benefit us. And Buckley said, no, we're going to go and take the war to the Soviet Union, battle to the Soviet Union, and he got us involved in Vietnam and Laos, or maybe it's Cambodia, and the Contras in Nicaragua and Grenada. He supported all of those efforts. He also made a point in excluding anyone who he deemed not conservative. This included groups like the John Birch Society, radical libertarians like Murray Rothbard, Ron Paul, and Lew Rockwell Jr., and he also basically said, if you are America first, you are not part of the new right. He also changed economic policy, whereas the old right had been protectionist, pro-tariff, and all of that, but pro-free market back at home. Buckley, on the other hand, was free trade and free markets, and also free immigration. All of those, two of those things, free trade and free immigration, the old right were against. Buckley, of course, led the charge for the neoliberal school of economics to take over the American right in economic theory, led by men such as Friedrich Hayek, Milton Friedman, and Ludwig von Mises. Some of these men I actually like, but I'm just saying that they weren't entirely bad. They're not entirely bad, but I think some of their theories on free trade and all that might not have been the greatest. They did take over the American right and made it into a neoliberal right wing. And if you weren't on board with the neoliberal agenda, you were merely kicked out. And hence the reason why radical libertarians like Murray Rothbard were kicked out, because his message didn't fit Buckley's idea of good economic neoliberal policies. If you were too anti-Fed, if you were too anti-taxation, well, you're too extreme for the right. That was basically Buckley's entire shtick. By the way, too, if you were anti-UN, if you were anti-central banking, you also were kicked out of the American right. The John Birch Society, a society that has consistently proven that American entrance into the United Nations, into NATO, has only been detrimental to American sovereignty, were frequently derided by Buckley and his group of believers as kooks, as crazy schizophrenic conspiracy theorists. They were pushed out of the American right and told they were not right-wing. And then, of course, with the nationalist idea, Buckley kind of destroyed that in some ways he did not. Instead of putting American citizens first, he supported, yes, somewhat of a nationalistic policy. He supported the idea of having an American empire. He supported the idea of having a large standing army. But he wasn't really like an American first conservative, like a America first nationalist in the way that he wanted to like center on making America itself better. Instead, his thing was also sending out massive amounts to foreign aid and all of that to other countries. Foreign countries. And that was his entire perspective. That was his entire shtick. He destroyed the old right, replaced it with the new right, led by men such as himself, Ronald Reagan, and Barry Goldwater. And in fact, he would later on lead, become an increasingly important force in the American conservative movement with his famous magazine, the National Review, and of course with the election of Ronald Reagan in 1980. We should note too, the reason why I'm kind of opposed to this new right phenomenon that Buckley led is because instead of centering on cultural conservatives of keeping America, of keeping the demographics the same, of keeping, limited immigration, keeping America a Christian country, instead he centered more on economics. He kind of became the, and yes, some people might deride me and say that's not entirely true. He spoke out against affirmative action, all that. He did, but he didn't go far enough. And again, he was more of a free trade, free immigration guy. And he kind of led, he was pro foreign intervention. He wasn't exactly America first, like I said, as we say it. America first conservatives, like beginning with Pat Buchanan and all that, are really concerned with the cultural cohesion of America, of ensuring that it remains the society our founders created it from, a Christian, moral, probably European society. That doesn't mean we don't allow others to join our society. Other people, blacks and all that, are welcome, but we want to keep it to a more, the demographics that originally created America, because that's what America is. And if you don't like that, well, post an angry comment in the comment section below. Anyways, the new right led the right up until basically the election of Donald Trump, which is when MAGA came around. And of course, MAGA was when Donald Trump came up and said, no foreign wars, put American interests first, we're going to protect American manufacturing, and the neoliberal establishment of the right had a heart attack and basically collapsed on the floor. They didn't die, but they had a heart attack. And then MAGA came around, which was unfortunately infiltrated by men such as Ben Shapiro, who said they're America first, but they weren't really. And then, of course, this led to a subset of younger men involved in MAGA to branch off of MAGA and invent a new political phenomenon known as America First, which was a bit more of a hardcore version of MAGA that was, characterized by edgy jokes and all of that. And so, this is a brief history again. That has been the history of the right wing. And as you can guess, this new, starting with MAGA and now with America First nationalism, as exemplified by Nick Fuentes and his followers, and even people who aren't, Dave Smith and all that, Tucker Carlson, they're exemplifying that nothing is new under the sun. America is returning back to, the American right is returning back to its nationalist, protectionist, isolationist standpoint, history, past. And that's what it is. And I'm part of that past. I'm part of that movement somewhat. I'm not going to say I support everything Nick Fuentes supports, but I am America First. And I have issues with protectionism. I'll have a video later on about America First economic policy and how we're going to exemplify that. But today we're really just discuss the brief history that the American right has gone through. And of course, this is the reason why the generations are so different. People ask, why are baby boomers so against MAGA? It's because they grew up when the new right was the new right, and they supported the baby boomers. The baby boomers supported the new right. And so they were neoliberal, they were free trade, free immigration, not illegal immigration, but free legal immigration, all of that. And then, of course, the younger Gen X and millennials are a bit more MAGA, but not entirely. They're just a tad more. And the younger men, like myself, are more America First. We're more nationalistic. We're going back to the right wing of Robert Taft. We, of course, have disagreements with each other, but that does not mean we are not unified in our cause, in our outlook, in our goal, which is to make America great again by putting America first. America first. So if you really liked this show, I recommend that you click that subscribe and like buttons. I recommend you ring that notification bell and leave a comment in the comment section below. Tell me if you're America First. Tell me if you're not America First. Tell me what you would like me to talk about next. I've kind of started off with just analyzing the news. I realize that's not really a way to define a movement of young men. You don't do it by just being like, so today the Dodgers won the game and blah, blah, blah. that's just not really how you make a movement. You make it by laying down a philosophical argument for it, or theoretical arguments for it. Of course, with using modern data and modern analytics in conjunction. So I hope all of you guys, again, enjoyed the show. Leave a comment in the section below. Ring the notification bell and that subscribe button. Click that subscribe and like button. It really gets me more popular in the YouTube algorithm. Till next time, this is the American Experience, broadcasting out of the greatest country on God's green earth. Stay safe, stay free. Remember, America first, America first. America always, America only, America first. Till next time, have a good one, folks.